And now, our feature presentation.
The best in the world is right here, right now.
Whether you like it or don't like it, pal, learn to love it.
Ladies and gentlemen,
welcome.
All right, listen up.
Now it's our time to step forward. It's time to bring the NWA back into the spotlight.
I was thinking that it might be a good idea if you and I formed an alliance.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Attention, everyone. Welcome to the greatest wrestling program in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? Stop what you're doing and listen.
It's the Alliance Guys podcast with your hosts Kevin Frazier, DKM, and JCap.
Basically, on today's episode of the Alliance Guys podcast, I'm speaking with a stalwart of Memphis wrestling, a man who's been in that scene for 20 years. My guest has stood across the ring from legends like Jerry the King Lawler. He's been across the ring with the likes of superstar Bill Dundee. I'm talking about a man who's a two-time NWA Southern Junior Heavyweight Champion. He held the NWA Mid-South Tag Team titles with Ricky Murdoch. I'm talking about Dustin Starr. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. I've actually been really looking forward to it. I keep up with all your stuff. I know you watch a lot of wrestling, and gosh, you really dug deep for the Ricky Murdoch and all that kind of stuff, man.
That's what I do. I've been told that I'm an expert on the wilderness era of the NWA, but I just like to think of that as a fun time for pro wrestling. And I remember not as much watching your matches, but reading about matches with you and like Big Bully Douglas and
oh wow,
there's a whole list of names that I've followed. I used to try to watch the USCWA or I messed that up, USACW, a lot of the USWO in Tennessee, and I know like in some of those promotions you were there, and a lot of those guys that wrestling I was following through the NWA. So it's really cool to kind of see that maturation process from your career as just an in-ring talent, just a guy. And now, I mean, you're hosting the Championship Wrestling from Memphis, and even more so now, you're bringing wrestling back to Memphis live and in color. Tell me how that feels.
First of all, the wilderness era, that sounds about right, because we used to just be such big marks for the NWA and what it used to be and all that kind of stuff. And at that time was like, wow, yeah, I won an NWA title, but does it really mean that much? You know, that kind of thing. And then you fast forward to now and Billy and gosh, Nick Aldis and the NWA Women's World title being defended on AEW with Serena Deeb, who is great. They're all great, man. It's kind of like big time and then big time. So but
well,
I was there through all of that stuff.
Don't sell yourself short. I mean, that lineage, that title that you held, Daniel Bryan held that belt. So I mean, you're in good company. You know what I mean? Like that. It is what it is. But that was a good time in the NWA. Even though there weren't as many eyeballs, there certainly has that same lineage, same history, same tradition.
For sure. And then fast forwarding here, I'm still an in-ring competitor. I probably have not had a match. It's been about a year and a month. It came up on my time hop just due to COVID. And then also with the transition and I think this is a perfect transition for me because I can't wrestle forever. I think that my future in professional wrestling, although I still can and will get inside the ring, I don't see a longevity or a long-term in-ring career for myself, maybe short-term or whatever the case may be, but transitioning to being a host and just doing multiple other things. I always had blinders on that I was only going to be a pro wrestler. So I I really just ignored radio and other TV opportunities, which sounds silly, but you grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, where Memphis wrestling was the professional sports team. We didn't have the Grizzlies. We didn't have the Redbirds. We didn't have, the Memphis Chicks weren't that big of a deal. It was, but it wasn't. And then Memphis wrestling was the only thing that you had. Mid-South Coliseum every single Monday night. And all that we just talked about, the wilderness era, it seems like a whole different lifetime ago. because things have changed so much and my role has changed so much to where now we're relaunching Memphis wrestling for the first time in 15 years. And with Memphis having such a long history and tradition of great professional wrestling, like literally the Memphis Grizzlies a couple of years ago had special uniforms that had championship medallions on it. It was the Memphis Wrestling edition, pretty much the championship edition of their jerseys. And so wrestling nights and all that kind of stuff. But to be able to be launching something that hasn't happened in 15 years, it's almost hard to believe that how did you guys not have Memphis wrestling for 15 years? But we didn't. And so here we are. And we're spearheading that along with United Wrestling Network and David Marquez. And gosh, we're super excited about it, man. I'm like giddy. I haven't slept in 3 days.
Well, I was watching the highlights of it wasn't the highlights, it's the full video, but I watched your Facebook Live the other night, and you were talking about how you're drinking a cup of coffee because you're going to go work out afterwards, and everybody in the lane, you're still drinking that coffee.
And the same thing.
Yeah, and a lot of those guys from your past were like congratulating you. I mean, it's got to be a pretty good feeling because you're right. Memphis has been a capital for professional wrestling. I mean, we talk about here in Southern California, we had the Grand Olympic Auditorium for many, many years. In New York, of course, they have, Madison Square Garden, the mecca of professional wrestling. But Memphis very much was rich with history, still is rich with history and tradition of professional wrestling. I mean, to bring that back, I think that's awesome. And I'm sure the community is getting behind you guys. I mean, the success of the TV show in and of itself kind of shows that Memphis and wrestling kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, now the Memphis wrestling, Memphis in general is very particular about barbecue, about rock and roll, and about professional wrestling. Now we are Hoop City too, man. I mean, Memphis is Hoop Central, basketball, Memphis Tigers, Grizzlies, but those are three main. We can throw the fourth one in there: basketball, barbecue, rock and roll with the Blues, and then professional wrestling. So when David Marquez reached out to me, it's probably been 3 years ago now. We were trying to figure out a way to make this happen, and it has to be run like a business. You can't just do it and hope people show up and there's no money there and then you go out of business super fast. I mean, that's happened several times, not with me, but with other companies. But it had to be run like a business. And also we couldn't insult fans' intelligence and try to pull the wool over their eyes because they're too smart for that. So that's why we never called it Memphis Wrestling. We never called it, Championship Wrestling from Memphis. It was Championship Wrestling presented by Pro Shingle. And it was a syndication of the Hollywood product where guys get signed to NXT, WWE, AEW. Look at Adam Pearce right now. You know where he started.
Absolutely.
Look at Tyler Rust right now. Look at Danny Limelight in the ring with the AEW World Heavyweight Champion just a couple nights ago. So we had a plan, and that plan was supposed to go and start happening last April at the AutoZone Park show. COVID hit. So then we're just kind of in a holding pattern. It's like, all right, how long can we hold on? Because we just don't want to sit there and be stagnant, but then also other things are happening. So if we are very safe with our capacity, 25%, we launch, that gives us a good launching point. And then once everything gets back, bam, then we can take off. And when we made the announcement on Tuesday of this week that Championship Wrestling from Memphis would be back with TV tapings or premiering and all that good stuff, less than 48 hours, we sold every ringside seat that we have.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we only have general admit, and we're not talking hundreds of thousands of tickets. I mean, we are a very limited capacity, but that does let us know and other wrestling fans that, hey, man, people want to come and see this. So it's basically proof of concept this whole time, and it's been 3 years in the making. So we've been, 2 years coming up in April. On our 100th episode of Championship Wrestling, that's on February 27th. So that will be the premiere. So in turn, we're kind of hitting 100, but then we're flipping the calendar to number one for Championship Wrestling from Memphis. So this has been the goal since day one. It's not a lot of people are surprised, but myself, my Maria, and David Marquez, we're not surprised at all. This was the goal the whole time.
I mean, you're literally answering the questions before I even have a chance to ask them, which is
great.
My bad. But no, it's great. It's great. I do want to talk a lot more about Championship Wrestling from Memphis, but I want the audience to know who Dustin Starr is. I mean, we briefly talked about your run with the NWA Junior Heavyweight Southern Junior Heavyweight Championship, the NWA Mid-South Tag titles, but let's talk about Dustin Starr. how he got his start in professional wrestling. And by the way, wish Maria a happy birthday for me today.
I will. I've been plugging it the whole time. I've done several radio interviews today and podcasts and different things. Just tried to strum up as much excitement as I can, and I'm giving her the shout out. So do I have to sing on this one, or
no, you don't have to. But
happy birthday,
happy 29th to your bride, the lovely Maria. But let's talk about your business and how you got started.
It's kind of cliche, man. It's all I ever wanted to do. That's it. That's the bottom line. Since I was 5 years old, we used to even on summertime go on vacation to Fort Myers, Florida, go to the beach with my grandparents, and we would have our parents record Memphis Wrestling, USWA, record it, and we would binge watch it.
Nice.
Before Netflix, before WWE Network, we would have a VHS with 6 hours or whatever of Memphis Wrestling and just watch it all the way through. So there was no question, man. 100%. I used to practice promos in the mirror talking to Lance Russell and Dave Brown. Not WWE, not WCW, but Lance and Dave. And fast forward now, I've been able to work with Dave Brown and do commentary with him and have Lance call some of my matches and be friends with him before he passed away. So it's just been a whole big bucket list. But I started training when I was 15 years old. My mom drove me to Jericho, Arkansas to meet Outlaw Don Bass, one of the original assassins, the singing cowboy who Jeff Jarrett pretty much borrowed that gimmick and took it on to the national stage. Literally, I've talked to Jeff about it. And that's it. She signed a waiver. I paid my own way. I think it was $3,000 that I pay a 15-year-old kid having to pay, every time I went in. And I think, and this is just a veteran, Don Bass, and the guy that was helping train thought, I was a 140-pound skinny little kid, I'm sure they weren't thinking, let's just take his money. But it's kind of one of those things. Like, I don't know if they'll ever do anything. But, yeah, he's paying us. Let's teach him. And I had my first match when I was, I think, almost 17, so 16 years old. I kind of had to kayfabe and hide that, my age and everything. And then over the years, I've been able to work with guys like Derek King and Alan Steele, who are the very best wrestlers in Memphis today. They were on Power Pro Wrestling. We got to set up the rings at Channel 5. We got to watch live Memphis TV take place. And little did I know that even though I was on that show some, but I wasn't like featured on that show. Everything around me was like osmosis. It sinks all in and you use it later. And
For
never
sure.
in a million years would I ever think that I would be putting some of that stuff to use, launching my own. Like, that wasn't the goal. It was to be a pro wrestler.
Yeah.
And so, I worked around the Mid-South area here and I'll never forget my first opportunity with WWE was with Stone Cold Steve Austin and Eddie Guerrero at a bar scene on Monday Night Raw at Muggs. Okay. And it was just kind of a hillbilly honky-tonk bar, and we sang karaoke, and Austin, he said, hey, kid, what do you do for a living? And it was on microphone and everything. And I worked at a sign company, so you could see this coming from a mile away. I said, well, I make signs. And Austin's like, well, I got a sign for you. Boom, and hits me with the middle finger right in my face. And I shook hands with Eddie Guerrero, and we kind of locked like that. And I looked at his arms, and I'm like, holy cow. I got in the car, and I'm like, dude, I got some growing up to do, man. Because
how old were you back then?
Like, man, maybe 18.
Wow.
Maybe 18, 19. So at that point, it was like, all right, man, if you're going to work there, you better get serious. And, I've always been in the gym since 15. And Spellbinder, who was Phantasmo in WWE, good friend of mine, he helped train me. And I've literally just grew up in the wrestling business, and got some opportunities. And here we are.
Well, I always like to dive deep into guys who I interview. I want to know about you. So I don't want to ask the same rhetorical questions that I'm sure you hear 100 times. But like, one thing that stuck out to me was your appearance for NWA Wildside. Now, back then, Wildside was one of the top promotions of the NWA. They really, that was kind of like the place to be. They had television. A lot of their talents that worked on those shows were kind of passed
AJ Styles.
AJ
Styles. Bill Behrens was the one that ran that. So I told a funny story about Bob Ryder here not too long ago when he passed away. Is when I was getting some opportunities with TNA and doing their explosion matches, that kind of put me to an audience that I didn't know in the Nashville area, like Burt Prentice, Bob Ryder. And one of the little funny stories is I remember a guy that I thought he was watching me change clothes in the locker room. And I bumped my buddy and I said, I think this guy's staring at me. And he's like, is he trying to watch you change? And I said, I think so. And so I just kind of walked around, I had a towel on. I just kind of walked around for a second. And then finally he got tired of waiting and he walked up and introduced himself. And it was Bob Ryder. He wanted to book me. He didn't want to watch me change. So I felt like such an idiot. But then that kind of helped me get booked in other places. And that's kind of how, and I had forgotten all about Wildside. But I met Cowboy James Storm, Chris Harris, the Naturals. But man, so many great athletes came out of Wildside. It's funny you bring that up.
Well, it's just, again, like, that's what I do. I'm the NWA guy, right? So I'm looking for ties to that. And I know, like, at that time, they kind of had a fast pass to WCW. And like you said, AJ Styles, but there was really a lot of guys that came directly from Wildside, Air Paris, right into WCW. And I was wondering if when you got that opportunity, if that was going through your head, or was it just another booking for you? Were you trying to grow your brand, or did it just kind of happen?
Yeah, I was always told to wrestle as many different places as you can and wrestle as many different wrestlers as you can. And so WCW was kind of on my mind because I felt like I could probably have an opportunity there and maybe not WWE just yet. But in all reality, I was way too green and way too young. My everything from my body to probably my face, everything just hasn't matured yet into a I used the Usos are great, right? But if you look at the Usos 5 years ago, they look like such babyface kids that it was hard to imagine them being what they are now. But then they grow into that role. Or the Young Bucks, if you look at the Young Bucks 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, such babyface young looks, but now they've matured into their bodies and matured into what they look like. And that's so weird to say, but that's true. I just I was still so young and, had not matured at all into the way my appearance or my persona and all that stuff. I felt like I got a lot more comfortable fast forwarding when I had Maria in my corner, because then it was kind of like you always have a vision. I always thought of it like a comic book character of what I wanted to be, very similar to Ric Flair, very similar to like Buff Bagwell, which sounds kind of crazy, Lex Luger. You got that superhero body, but then also you got the prettiest woman in the room by your side, Right. And so I hadn't really got that far or got exactly what I thought I could be until then. If that sounds kind of weird, but that's the truth.
That makes perfect sense. When we were all kids playing with our LJ and action figures, and we're sitting there like doing our own wrestling matches, and when you think about that day when you're in the ring, you have that perception. You wanna be the superstar, and that's what you're saying makes complete sense to me. You want to have that look and that feel, and you got there, of course. I mean, you have.
But then hindsight, you look back and you're like, dude, I was not ready for that. But at the time you're like, oh, let me get it. I'm ready. But then when you look back, it's like, no, I wasn't really ready. I think every wrestler will tell you that.
Well, sure. Hindsight's 20/20, and you're looking at it from a veteran now as opposed to a greenhorn. So of course you've learned along the way. You mentioned when you were a kid and you'd go with your grandparents to Florida, be on the beach and ask your parents to record Memphis wrestling. Were you ever watching stuff like Music City Wrestling with Burt Prentice and Mike Rapata and stuff like that, or was that not really your cup of tea?
Well, at that time, you didn't have like YouTube to where you could just look stuff up and watch everything under the sun. I mean, I think in those days it was still kind of tape trading or going to the video store. I used to see the video, like the VHSs, and say, "Oh man, I haven't seen those Jerry Lawler matches." Like it was him with blood all over. So where did that come from? So I was pretty much going to be watching. Like at that time, I didn't even really watch ECW because it wasn't something that came on. It wasn't easily accessible.
Right.
So mine was going to be, mainly Power Pro Wrestling. Before that, USWA, and then by the time I was able to work at Power Pro Wrestling, I started setting up the rings and all that. And then when there was time for an opportunity, which is kind of a funny story, the night that Memphis Power Pro Wrestling lost the WWE developmental contract, I got a text message at probably 2 or 3 in the morning, or maybe it was an AOL instant message that said, "Hey, be at TV tomorrow." And I'm like, "For what?" Because at that time, we would go when the developmental was there, and we didn't even touch the ring. Like we would set it up and that was it. So you kind of felt used in the sense to where we didn't even get to work out in the ring. when before we would get in the ring, work out before the boys got there and all that stuff, but all that went away. So it was just kind of like, why? And he said, trust me. It was Derek King. He said, trust me, you want to be there. And so I said, okay. And I was there, and they pulled us in the office. Brandon Baxter did, and said, developmental contract's gone, and that's going to be opportunities for a lot of the local guys. So at that point, I was just more invested into the Power Pro. Now I did work Burt Prentice's shows for a while. Eventually when we kind of branched out and did all that stuff. But at that time, man, I was just watching Memphis and watching WWE or F at the time, WCW. We didn't really have, like I said, even ECW at that time wasn't something that came on or easily accessible. You had to really seek it out or trade a tape. And I'm trying to think of what year that was. It had to be, it was 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, like 99, 98, 97. Yeah,
right. I was just breaking in.
It's kind of a funny story myself. Like, I was in high school. My parents had a house, a cabin up in the mountains, and it had TV and everything. And they somehow, some way, Music City Wrestling was syndicated in that market, but not in my home market, which is an hour away. And so I literally had my VCR recording, like I set the timer so it would record like a month in advance or a month.
Nice.
We'd go up there next, and I'd have all these Memphis matches. Not Memphis, Music City Wrestling. So I'd see matches with Mike Rapata and all that stuff. And I was like, I saw Chris Harris long before he made it to Impact and all that stuff. So that's why I ask, because it's just one of my fond memories of plugging that tape in. I'm like, okay, this is something completely different, but it's still wrestling. So let's check it out.
Yeah. I remember AWA would come on really early in the morning, just some random time. And I never knew, but when I got lucky to watch it, I was like, oh man, Sergeant Slaughter's still wrestling, or
yes,
whatever. It was just, I can't even explain to you that when I would turn on the TV at night and see Saturday night's main event,
yes,
I'd be like, where did this come from? When is this on? Have I been missing this? But it was only like a one time. It was a special. So I was a kid. I had no idea. There was like a guide and a schedule and all that stuff.
My brother got me into wrestling, obviously. So like when I was a kid, like I remember watching WrestleMania 2 live on TV through pay-per-view, and we were always looking for wrestling. So whether it was like the AWA on ESPN, and later it was like Global Wrestling Federation, or when we could get UWF, or we'd go to the video store and get like the shoot wrestling in Japan. I mean, we would watch whatever we could, whatever it was. So I kind of understand how you're coming from, where like when you see it, just jump onto it and take a look. But so with all that being said, I was again looking at your career and watching like the maturation process. You spent a lot of time working for that USA CW on and off. Tell me about working for Burt Prentice. He's always been kind of this different fella, and I don't want to say anything bad, because he did a lot for wrestling, but I mean, some people think he was good for wrestling. Some people say he was bad for wrestling. But what were your experiences working for him?
I never made any money. that kind of, I worked for Burt for quite a while. It's kind of a stigma. Once you're one of Burt's boys, you're one of Burt's boys, and he kind of controls everything. So I kind of had to separate myself from that. Again, I all due respect to Burt. I don't know. Yeah, I don't work for Burt now. And we're about an hour apart. So he has a show in Jackson. I have a show coming up in Memphis. I don't look at us like competition. I think that he does look at us like competition, but that's all fine. But yeah, I worked a lot with Burt. One of the things that I will say though is that there was a time where I went and did a camp with Mike Bucci, and it was one of Burt's type of deals. And so the whole idea was to get WWE bookings out of that. So when I did reach out to Mike when they were in town, and I was getting bookings previous to that, so it was like another in. You got to go through these hoops in order to get in. And so I called to get the booking, and he said, "Well, wait a second, you're one of Burt's guys, right?" And so, well, kind of. I was at the camp, and he goes, "Oh, well, get in touch with Burt." And then that was it. And I was like, "Oh, okay. I don't want to be one of somebody else's boys. I want to be able to get booked independently." So I kind of got stuck in that thing. So I had to kind of separate myself from that. And honestly, I'll just be totally honest with you. Global Force Wrestling launched in Jackson, Tennessee at Jackson General's Ballpark. And I was there. I worked with Chris Masters in that show.
Yeah.
And so I was asked there were 2 shows going on. One of them, Global Force, was first. Bert's was second. I was asked to cancel the Bert booking. So I called Bert and told him that, they're asking me to do this. It's their first inaugural event. There's big opportunities because there was TV aspirations and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So anyways, Bert got hot about it. And so here we are.
And that's that old school mentality. I think times have changed with the more modern promoters where like Dave, for example, while a part of the NWA years ago, I mean, he had affiliate promotions all over the area, and his idea was, I want my guys to get as much work as they can everywhere they can, because that's going to make them better when they're on my shows. So I mean, we had promotions in San Diego, San Bernardino, Los Angeles, Anaheim, and his talent, the guys that were working for him on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, and before that NWA Pro Wrestling, I mean, they were all getting work everywhere. So I guess it's just more of an old school mentality.
Yeah, and there comes a time where you're supposed to be able to make money. There's a lot of dues that you pay. There's a lot of freebies that I can't even begin to tell you how many miles I drove to Nashville and back for free. Never even asked for a single dollar. But then eventually when you get, and I don't want to say to a certain level, but when you get to a certain point, that monetary value is supposed to come up. Right. And with some promoters, it just never happens. And so, even 20 something years in and, working for professional sports teams, like all the sports teams here in Memphis, and being a host on CW30 and then having your own TV show and all that kind of stuff, not bragging. I'm just saying at some point, at what point do you get paid to do what you do?
Right.
And with some promoters, it's never. And so with those promoters, I would rather not work for.
Absolutely. But look, no argument here. I mean, this is a business first and foremost. No matter how much you enjoy the sport, everyone's in there to make a buck. Everybody. So
Sure,
if you're not
absolutely
paid, there's no reason to stick around for that. So let's go a little bit further back in time to talk about that NWA Southern Junior Heavyweight Championship, because I know it happened early in your career. But I mean,
yeah,
getting a title definitely means something, and you held it on 2 separate occasions. What did it mean when you got that title victory, and how did you feel being champion?
It's pretty cool. I think I was talking to Papo Esco here recently about winning the United World Tag Team titles, and he put it perfectly. He said that he looks at it like it's a supervisor role at a job, or some sort of promotion at your job, or they had that trust in you, not only inside of the ring but outside of the ring. So you feel like you're selected to be that guy. Not only inside the ring, but outside of the ring, because of course stuff goes on all over the place. So I felt it, as a kid, literally as a kid, I was excited. I won a championship. Wow, this is cool. How did this happen? That kind of thing. But then looking back on it, they probably said, hey man, this kid's been working hard. He's doing good, and he's reliable and all that kind of stuff. So it's all the right stuff. You would never put a championship on somebody that might not make it to the next show, or that might make a mistake that puts you in bad publicity. So, but for me being a kid, it was really exciting. I think fast forwarding to Memphis wrestling, I won the Southern Tag Team titles with Kevin White twice. To me, that was kind of a bigger deal because it was Memphis television. It was Jerry Lawler and Corey Macklin that did it. And then randomly, just out of the blue, they put the Junior Southern Heavyweight title on me. That was just, they went for weeks. I would be on TV, but I wasn't getting like pushed or anything. And then all of a sudden I'm winning the title, and I'm like, where did this come from? So those were cool. And also I was in the business a little bit longer, to where I felt like it meant a little bit more because it was on television. But those that you're talking about with the NWA, I think that was in Dyersburg, Tennessee, and around that area. So I worked there for quite a while. That was every single Saturday night, all up and down Highway 51, man. You would work at Covington, Ripley, Dyersburg, New Bern, Trenton. Oh, I know I'm missing something, but man, Millington. So there's 6 just right down Highway 51, just right outside of Memphis there, and Dyersburg. And it still is a really good wrestling town, and everything around it is a good wrestling town. So it was pretty cool, man. It was, it's what you think it would be. You're excited and so young, like, wow, I've got a championship belt. I get to carry this thing in my bag. Cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So then kind of moving on, I mean, to this point in your career now, I mean, you've done so much. You've done a lot of it on TV, and now you, for the last, what is it, like you said, almost going on year 3 with partnering with Dave Marquez. The show's been on for just over 2 years now, right? A year,
Close,
right?
close.
Going to
100 episodes will be February 27th, so we're almost 2 years in. But I say 3 years because it took. So how the whole thing happened is Dave Marquez found me on Facebook, and he saw that myself and Maria were wrestlers and that we were hosting the TV station. So wrestling aside, we're still on twice an hour, every hour on CW30 doing Jerry Springer commercials or Coming Up Next and things like that. And
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And we would do live remote. So we were trying our best with the Coliseum Coalition to save the Mid-South Coliseum. So we would do live remotes on ABC 24 here in Memphis, to where we would do the reporting that morning. Or I remember doing interviews with Jerry the King Lawler inside the ring at FedEx Forum with all the Grizzlies staff standing there watching behind the scenes, and we're live. I mean, it's like bucket list stuff. Never thought I'd be doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then, so anyways, Dave found me on Facebook and thought, man, there's wrestlers hosting this station. We're on CW stations all across the country. So why don't we do this? And I said, man, I don't think the Hollywood product would work quite like you think in Memphis. And here's why. He's like, well, let's figure this thing out. And so I would literally have meetings with the general manager. And actually, when he signed us, the first thing he said, how come there's not wrestling on television in Memphis? And I'm kind of like, you ask him, you're the TV guy, you tell me. And he said, well, no, you're the wrestling guy. You tell me. And so first of all, I'm thinking, hey, now, all right. And so I said, let's figure this thing out. I'll be back in touch with you. And so I would go in and I would pitch different ideas. And he would say no to the idea, but he wasn't saying no to wrestling.
Right.
And he even asked me about Sinclair and Ring of Honor and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, it's not local. You're just buying a show, but it is a good product and people will watch it, but it's not quite what we're talking about. And so finally, I was in a position where I was laying in the bed sleeping, or I was awake, Maria was sleeping, and I just thought, because I was in a transition to where I was doing so much work with basketball and baseball and just different sports and stuff, and also maintaining a real job. So anybody that's watching this, most professional wrestlers have real jobs. That's why they're weekend warriors, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the truth of the matter. And so I was in a unique spot where I thought I could probably pull this off and be a full-time entertainer. And so I said, hey, Maria, are you awake? She didn't answer. I said, Maria, are you awake? She didn't answer. I was like, Maria, are you awake? And she's like, I am now. What? I said, what if we did this? She's like, you could try. And I was like, do you think it would work? She's like, you could try. I was like, well, I can't try anything without you having the stamp of approval. Like, she's my partner. She's my wife. Like,
understood.
If mama's not happy, nobody's happy.
Absolutely.
So she said, talk to Dave. And so the next day I talked to Dave, got the meeting with the general manager, went in and pitched it. And it was like Shark Tank, man. He kicked back and he smiled. And when he did, I knew that was it. I knew that we had it. And so from that point, it was just working towards it, getting sponsors, getting local businesses to buy into it. And shout out to Pro Shingle. I mean, there's probably anybody watching in the Mid-South, Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Pro Shingle loves professional wrestling. They have helped support championship wrestling. So give them a shot, proshingle.com. Dave Brown is a spokesperson. So Dave Brown, the voice of Memphis wrestling and the weatherman for all the years, tag team there. But that's how it all happened, is Dave Marquez being persistent for a full year, and saying, hey, I think this thing would work. Let's figure this out. And then us just bouncing ideas off each other. And then, bam, here we are, knowing that the ultimate goal was to launch championship wrestling from Memphis. That was 100% the goal. And we just have to have a proof of concept. And we had to know that we could be successful as a business, not wrestling and not wrestling business, but as a business.
Right.
And then take that and take the next step. So it's definitely the crawl before you walk before you run type of thing,
Well, and I think the incredible thing about that is, and again, I have to say this, I've been following Marquez since 2004. So I've seen the whole thing. I was there when he was producing UPW. I was there when he was producing XPW, and to see him and his partnership with New Japan Pro Wrestling the first time, and then everything with the NWA, and when he left the NWA, you knew it stung. You knew there was a bite to that, and watching him trying to effort to create a territory system akin to the NWA and having, some limited success, but nothing like this. And you guys definitely put in the work, because this is a genuine, like, this is a thing. This isn't you kept saying proof of concept. It's here. Like, this isn't it's not imaginary. It's not, well, what if. It's, you guys are doing it. And I think there's got to be a lot of satisfaction for Dave, but also for you and Maria, because the hard work is paying off. February 14th, your TV taping kicks off. You said it earlier. The first episode will air 2 weeks later on CW30. And I think that's amazing. I mean, that, again, that's the proof of concept, but that's also the American dream. You put in the work, and you're getting to that result. And and to have the noon time slot too. I mean, having wrestling on Saturday at noon is just like, how'd you get that time slot? Because so many other wrestling companies have midnight or 1 o'clock, which there's nothing wrong with that either. But to have a Saturday at noon time slot is just fantastic. And I was familiar a little bit with Dave Marquez previously, and I had known of him, but had never worked with him. And in the wrestling business, so many people say so many different things about so many different people that you don't know. Like, I have tried to do a good job about not basing my opinion off of somebody else's opinion. Right. So if somebody tells me, well, don't use him because he'll no-show you. Well, he's shown up for me every single time. Right. So it was kind of one of those things where Dave was familiar with me, but hadn't worked with me, and the same with him. So there was a lot of trust involved because we're so far away, and it just worked out. And he's been a great partner. And then also with the proof of concept too, the Memphis market and what we've done with this show and the way that the template that we've kind of made has helped them launch like West Coast, and they've had different various affiliates in other markets, and they're using what we've done here as a template to do it in other markets. And to me, like for me, when we started using the different background, like the different studio setting, once we had to leave because the studio was shut down, when I saw that they started using the same one, I was flattered. I was like, oh my gosh, the TV guys are like using our idea. So it's been super cool, like learning a lot of stuff from them, but then also some of our ideas coming to life on their side too, because they're on 125 or so different stations across the United States. So whenever we do something that they're like, hey, we need to do that here, like, I'm thrilled about it, because I feel like, hey, we're doing something, but they're using what we've done here to do in other markets. And to us, that's really flattering too. I love it. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty cool. Like, I'm one of these guys who I live in the LA market, but I don't watch the show on KDOC. I watch it on YouTube. I watch your channel, and I go back and forth between CW30 and well, not CW30, but the Championship Wrestling YouTube channel, and then United Wrestling Network YouTube channel. And I'm kind of a YouTube nerd, because again, I'm trying to grow my brand as well, and so I look into things like watch hours and viewership, and I mean, you guys have over 7,000. You just hit the threshold today, yesterday, 7.5 thousand followers or subscribers on your YouTube channel. You've had over 1 million people, 1 million views on your channel, which means you're doing something right. You're getting an audience there, and one of the things that I love about what you're doing and how you make your product different from just Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is that you also have your own podcast that's associated with it, and that you also do more localized content, so it's for the audience. And then you guys even broke it down further. You have playlists dedicated to wrestlers. I think that's awesome. I think it's a brilliant strategy, and I want to salute you for that.
Well, thank you, man. We worked really hard on that. We haven't spent any marketing dollars on actual YouTube, so all that is organic. I feel like and I've told Dave this, so this is not me talking trash or anything. I feel like they're missing the boat on some of the social stuff. I guess I understand it just a little bit better, but that's the whole thing, is capitalizing on an audience that they already have. And they do not look at us like competition at all. They love it. So doing those playlists, doing the proper tags, breaking out the matches and having feature matches and doing exclusive content. When we did our restart is when I really saw a difference. When we went from doing like the best of type of shows, they were new shows but showing older footage. We had 500,000 minutes watched in a single month. And I'm like,
great.
Wait a second, what in the world? And so now it's stabilized a little bit to where we're right around 350,000 minutes watched. So we're monetizing it. I mean, it's not as well as I do, it's not a lot of money, but it's like a bank account. The longer that it goes, the more people watch, and the more minutes watched, the more money that you make. So launching the Memphis product, gosh, like Memphis wrestling has such a rich tradition. People from all over are going to want to see what it's all about. Like I've gotten text messages from guys like Jeff Jarrett saying, "Hey, what's going on out there?"
Nice.
And just really cool stuff. But yeah, we're averaging right about 350,000 minutes watched every single month.
That's incredible.
So that's using content that you could see in other places.
Yeah.
Now, when we have Championship Wrestling from Memphis, there's only going to be 2 places you can see it. YouTube.com/Championship Wrestling and CW30 in Memphis, and that's it. So there will be it won't be anywhere else.
Yeah.
So we're not sharing those numbers with anybody, but man, we've worked really, really hard on the YouTube channel.
Well, I know Lamb and myself will be definitely watching every week on YouTube.
Yes.
So that'll be pretty cool.
Thank you.
Are you surprised at the success that the show's done? Like I talked to Dave and I said, I think it's incredible what you guys are doing. And this was before you guys even announced the launch of the standalone show. And he told me like, this is one of the best ventures that he's connected to right now with Memphis, with everything else that's going on. That has been one of the most profitable properties that he's associated with right now. And does it surprise you that the success that you guys are receiving out there in Memphis?
It doesn't. The only reason I say is, man, we work really, really hard. I mean, it's a full-time job. It's actually probably 3 or 4 full-time jobs. The social media alone, that's why companies hire social media managers just to do social media. And then we've also learned video editing, and I've taught myself some Adobe Premiere. I've taught myself a little bit of the YouTube, and we really learned a lot of stuff about green screens and lighting and all that kind of stuff during the pandemic, because we weren't able to shoot in the studio anymore.
Right.
So we were forced to kind of learn a lot of the stuff, to do some of it ourselves. Now, shout out to John Roberts. He's our editor, does a lot of great work, but as much as I can do to take it off of him to make the show better, whereas where other people would sit back and wait for Dave and his team to do stuff, we feel like that we should not have to sit back and wait. Like, let me go get it, and then you guys help me fine tune it, or whatever the case may be. And the only reason I say is I probably haven't slept, 3 or 4 hours in the last 3 days since we launched the message, the press release. We redid our website, championshipwrestlingmemphis.com, just to be more user friendly and all that kind of stuff. But I don't want to sound, I want to sound as humble as I can be, but I'm not really surprised, just because we've worked really hard on the independent wrestling scene here. We work hard in the sports scene. We live in Memphis. We're embedded into the community. We do everything that we can as far as charities: American Cancer Society, Big Brother, Big Sister of Mid-South, St. Jude, Heal the Hood Foundation. So we do as much as we can to give back. And one of the hard parts about other markets is if you have a wrestler that doesn't live there and have, longevity there, or have friends there and family there and, business there and all that kind of stuff, it's really hard to go in and just sell wrestling. You have to sell relationships and friendships, right. And, it's more than just about the money. If you help people get what they need, then eventually you'll get what you need. And I really believe that. And, Dave will tell you, man, he's told me before, this is the best partnership we've had. And I think it's just because we want it. We're hungry, man. We go get it. If I pitch something and it's not a yes, that means it's a no. So I'm going to look for something else. You didn't say no, but you didn't say yes. So if it's not a yes, it's a no. So let me figure out another way to do it. I was actually going to invest in a building and have our own facility and such. And when that didn't happen, we had to pivot, and that's how we're launching this. And we've partnered with another local business, Top of the Line Event Hall. Man, they are fantastic. They're just like me and Maria, a husband and wife combo that was affected by the pandemic, and they're doing well, but they could do better. And so, hey, let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's how that all came about. Now they know, just like we know, that we're still looking for our home and our place, but that's going to be our home, for the foreseeable future. We've got the next 6 months booked up. So we have 8 total events to do television. February 14th, March 7th, April 11th after that. And then we've got more, but of course we want to take small bites at a time.
Oh, for sure.
But really, to answer your question, I'm flattered that it's been as successful it is, and I can't wait until we have the first couple of shows in the can, because at that point, it's not just something that we can talk about. Like I said all the time, we don't like to talk about it, we like to be about it. So at that point, I'll have it, and I can show potential partners and other wrestlers and other companies, like, here's what we're doing. Come be a part of it.
That's incredible, and I mean, that's such a positive outlook. As a business owner myself, and I know that there's a grind, and it's not a 9-to-5 grind. There's a 24-hour-a-day grind, and if you don't sleep, you're out there doing social media to get your product out there, to get your business out there. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've been spending the last few nights myself not sleeping a wink, and on there working on promoting either this show or my actual business or whatever it is. So I completely understand, and I feel like you should be satisfied. You should be able to do a little pat on the back like Barry Horowitz there and say, hey man, that's a great job. And
maybe after the 14th, maybe. Oh, that's going to be like a monster. That's like eating an elephant. So it's like, let me take that first bite, and then maybe we'll breathe and go, okay, whew. All right, good job on the first one. All right, so March 7th right around the corner.
Yeah, right? Because it's never going to stop. So when it comes to the show, then, are you guys are you the one that's writing, booking, doing all this stuff backstage? Are you bringing in somebody else to help you with creative, or is it you and Maria? What's the plan?
All the above. So it all lies kind of in my lap. Of course, Dave Marquez is there. The thing, though, with that though, is Dave, John, and the United Wrestling Network. They're extremely helpful, but they're not as familiar with the talent around here as what we are. So it would kind of be like, when we first started, hey, Dustin, help us book this TV. And I'm like, well, I don't really know the characters just yet. Now I can tell you like the back of my hand, who's doing what, who's, what everybody's doing, what their gimmick is, what I think that they should be doing, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so that all kind of lies on us. And the cool thing is there's a lot of really good, talented Memphis wrestlers that haven't gotten the opportunity, right? And when they did get the opportunity, it was the older school guys pushing their own agendas.
Right.
And again, with all due respect, Jerry Lawler's and all that kind of stuff, there's a way that they're going to do it. They're going to make sure that they get theirs. But on this show, Superstar Bill Dundee will be there. King Cobra, the first ever African-American world champion that pinned Jerry Lawler at Mid-South Coliseum, he'll be there. We're going to have... I think Sir Mo is going to be there. So former WWE World Tag Team Champion. So we're going to have legends and very experienced guys, but they know as well as I do that our focal point is the up and coming guys and the guys that haven't gotten the opportunity. So my plan is not to have those legends be in the ring. If you see Jerry Lawler on our show, it won't be in a wrestling capacity. It will be in a different type of role. And that's just how I kind of see moving the future along with pro wrestling, because we haven't had it in 15 years. It's time to build these new guys up. And number one, my main goal, along with running this TV, is to get those stars the opportunities, like Danny Limelight, like Tyler Rust, like Heather Monroe, and all those folks that are getting those looks at AEW and getting signed with NXT. Kathy Campanelli, there's so many that have come through the Championship Wrestling. We want to be that for Memphis.
Right.
So our primary goal is to make some stars, because if we can make some stars, then we're going to be looked at. Wow, what are they doing in Memphis? But a lot of those responsibilities are going to fall on me. But then also I've got a lot of backup and support where Maria, she'll say, well, wait a second, why are you doing that? She has a different outlook. Sometimes I'm in a bubble, man. I'm in my own bubble. And it's like, hey, what do you think of this idea? Is that dumb? Oh, but what if you did it this way? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we've got some experienced guys that are going to help out, but for the most part, that's going to be on me, Maria, Dave, probably mostly me, I guess.
Yeah, right.
But that's cool. I'm here for it.
So and again, you've said it a couple times. This is going to be about Memphis. This isn't Championship Wrestling from Hollywood Part 2. It's not Championship Wrestling from Hollywood in Memphis. This is a Memphis promotion. But with that being said, the Memphis area was introduced to a lot of stars from Hollywood. One of my favorites, Watts. I got to go to China with Watts.
Nice.
Heather Monroe and Danny Limelight. Is there at least a plan initially to use some of those talents from Hollywood to kind of help establish the stars in Memphis? Or are you just breaking free right off the bat and it's going to be a Memphis show with Memphis emphasis?
We would love to have some of the Hollywood talent come in for sure. I don't know how much you'll see of that right away, just because we got to make sure that we're cool with our working capital and such. But definitely, one guy in particular that I definitely want to fly to Memphis is Ray Rosas.
Well, that's because you want to wrestle him.
We got a little bit of beef that we still have to clear up. Of course, Watts. Watts is one of the most popular characters that we've had on the show here. When I'm out and about and people are talking about the show, they're like, "Man, what about the big man, Watts?" Or who's the one guy with the hair other than you? Gotta be Watts. Oh man, he kicks everybody's butt. And Heather Monroe is another very popular character where, people talk about her when we're walking in the streets, or I'm at a Grizzlies game working. They'll mention the show and they'll mention Heather Monroe. They'll mention Watts. So yeah, we definitely want to bring some of those guys and gals in and get them in the mix with the Memphians for sure.
So now the last question that has to be addressed is, there's an Arizona State champion. There's a Hollywood Heritage champion.
Here we go.
What are we going to call this Memphis title, and how soon are we going to crown a Memphis champion?
That's a really good question. So I'll give you a scoop right here. This has not been talked about just yet. Okay. So I think the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to have a Cobra Cup.
Nice.
So very, very similar to a PP3 Cup, but King Cobra, who is a Memphis wrestling legend I just mentioned, he's a good friend of mine. He's going to be at the tapings. And so what we want to do is we want to have an annual Cobra Cup to have a tournament it's not going to necessarily be a championship that's defended. It's probably not going to be like a PP3 that's cashed in, but that way we can honor the tradition and the legacy of King Cobra. I feel like Cobra is a guy that he made history.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that name. And to me, that sucks. Just to be point blank with you, that sucks. And so I feel like that would be a good start, is having a Cobra Cup. And so we'll probably have a tournament of some kind. Now we will have our own championship. I don't know how long that'll take, but I would imagine in the first couple of months we'll see our championship. We're going to try to stick to what the United Wrestling Network currently does. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Memphis Heritage Championship. And then you'll probably see the United Wrestling Network champions from time to time, just like the old NWA from time to time, come in and defend those titles here in Memphis. I would imagine that you might see something similar to a red carpet rumble, maybe a Grind City rumble or something of like that. But we're not here to try to reinvent the wheel. Wrestling is already big here in Memphis. David Marquez and the United Wrestling Network, if we weren't going to follow what they're doing, why are we partnered with them, So they've got it figured out. We were big fans of the red carpet rumble. Entering the red carpet rumble was so much fun. A little funny story there is when me and Maria arrived in Hollywood to do the commentary and then came back and were surprised into the red carpet rumble. We thought at first, like, wow, how cool would it be to come all the way from Memphis to California and like people know who we were. And man, the fans were chanting Memphis. They had Memphis signs, Dustin and Maria signs, and we were just like blown away by that. We were in the elevator at Hollywood Boulevard, going to go look at the Walk of Fame, and I mentioned to her, man, just imagine like getting recognized in the street or something out here. Like that was like the first couple of times we'd ever been to Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
And the elevator doors open and we walk out and somebody recognized us. We were like,
great.
What in the hell is going on here? Like, it was just cool. We were just blown away. So man, the fans out there have been awesome. And so I know that when those guys come in here, it's going to be great. But we want to stick with what the United Wrestling Network is good at, stick with what we're good at, and try to do very similar stuff, but do it in a Memphis style.
I mean, that's incredible. And again, like the next couple of weeks, next couple of months are pretty much going to be the same for you because it's what you've been doing for the last 3 years. So again, I want to say congratulations. I know it's not the end of the road. It's just the beginning, but you take that victory lap. You guys have certainly done something special in Memphis, and I believe you're going to continue to do so with championship wrestling from Memphis. So again, man, my tip my cap to you because what an incredible, again, you made something out of nothing, really. And, this is going to be big for you guys. It's big for the United Wrestling Network. You're part of that, that Platinum Triangle Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Prime Time Live, and eventually when it comes back, Championship Wrestling from Arizona. I mean, it's really, really special. And it's something like, the NWA isn't an affiliation of promotions anymore, but the United Wrestling Network is. I think that's really cool, really special. And, again, I can't wait to see what's next for you guys.
Thanks, man. Well, stay tuned. It's coming. Now we got to bridge the gap between what's going on right now and February 27th, because we would really like to have as much content to help push that and get the fans ready, because I know there's a lot of people from all over that watch on YouTube especially. And so we don't want to just, flip the switch, so to speak. We'd like to kind of ease into it so people kind of know what they're expecting, but then also at the same time, it's going to be kind of tough to do that leading in. It's just a real tricky with filming and, some of the people being limited and all that kind of stuff. But on February 27th, the premiere of Championship Wrestling from Memphis, it's going to be awesome. We did sell out of the ringside seats, but they're still general admission. They're only $10. If anybody's listening and they're in the Mid-South area, or if you're within 3 hours away and you want to make a road trip to come see live wrestling, I mean, this is going to be a part of history because we don't expect it to be a one and done or anything like that. We've already got tapings throughout the rest of the year. This is something that's going to be a regular every Saturday at noon. So, and also, just check out the site and let us know what you think. If there's an issue with the site, or if it can be user friendly in a different way, let us know. It's championshipwrestlingmemphis.com. But man, it's cool talking wrestling with you. You brought up a lot of memories that I just don't ever think of at this point.
And I did my
totally
job
different.
Because I gave you a different interview than what you normally have, and I did actually. I liked it a lot. I don't remember going to the old site, but it was very easy to navigate, very easy to use. It looked great. You guys did a good job on that. One last question, and then I promise I'll let you go. The podcast, that's going to continue to feature the stars of the United Wrestling Network, or is it going to be now more centralized in Memphis?
It'll be more centralized than Memphis. I was actually kicking that idea around that it would be a good way to introduce some of the guys here that maybe people don't know. There's still some really good stories going on in the United Wrestling Network with Gentleman Jervis and Sweet Robin. That whole heel turn there is interesting. Ray Rosas always has something interesting going on. The women's division, the women's world title coming up, crowning a United Wrestling Network world champion. All that stuff is big news. So we want to stay on the forefront of that. But then, the podcast we do ourselves, and I would like to start introducing some of these characters. So I was actually thinking today that might be a way to start doing that and transition just a little bit more of having some of these guys that we've announced. And if you go to our roster page, you'll already see some of the new characters and some of the new wrestlers that we are going to introduce onto the show. So those guys and gals are already committed. Everything from broadcasters to the legends that are going to be working with us. Now, not everybody's posted because you got to have some surprises, but for the most part, the local, I would say Mississippi, Tennessee, Arkansas, probably Texas as well. When they go on there, they're going to see some familiar faces on the website, and we're going to keep that updated.
Right now, I just logged in and I'm scrolling through. I'm like, yeah, looks clean, looks good. I'm excited for you guys. Again, congratulations. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today, and I appreciate you sitting through some of the tech issues we had earlier. But again, wish you nothing but success, and I'll be rooting for you out here in Southern California, and the Alliance will be watching.
Very cool. And hey, tell your brother Kevin Owens I said hello.
Yeah, right. I'll make sure to do that. All right. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you, man.
Thanks.